My name is Josianne Romasco. You can call me Josie. I'm a keeper aquarist from the Pittsburgh Zoo and PPG Aquarium, and I started the Sea Turtle Second Chance program here back in 2009. The reason I started that was because we haven't had turtles here since the early 90s on grounds at all, and they were adults, and I think a few of them were sent to Monterey Bay, and that was sort of the end of it, and that was in the old Aqua Zoo. So then come 2000, we have a brand new aquarium, and time's gone by, and we just haven't had any sea turtles to represent what's out in the wild population. So I wanted to bring them back, but in a big way, not just for the sake of throwing them in a tank and having something, you know, beautiful on exhibit. I really enjoy using this job as a platform to do the greater good, or to show our visitors that we can be that passionate about our job that we can replenish stocks in the wild, or lend a hand if there's a crisis situation, those sort of things. So that's where my sense of fulfillment comes, and that's where the Sea Turtle Second Chance program got started. So in 2009, we started a partnership project, the Hatchling Rescue Project, with the North Carolina Aquarium at Pine Knoll Shores, because for several reasons, actually. A lot of our visitors frequent the Outer Banks, and almost every tour that I have, I'll ask, just show of hands, who's been to the Outer Banks, Emerald Isle, and 3/4 of the group will almost always raise their hands. So very popular destination for our local visitors. So I feel like that gives us a very important role in the conservation of these species, because that's a huge nesting ground for predominantly loggerheads, but also greens and some leatherback activity. So they see a lot of frequency of nesting behavior happening. And I would have to guess that if you've ever been to North Carolina or down to the Outer Banks, you know that it's really not heavy boat traffic right offshore, because it's the Diamond Shoals. There's so many shipwrecks. So these females, I think, are having a better chance to try to come ashore to lay their nests, and more hatchlings. I just think it's a better habitat that's attracting these guys to this particular area. You go to the Keys, per se, and you might not see as much nesting behavior happening, because there's so much shallow water boat activity, and it's kind of, I would think it's kind of a deterrent. It's just sort of a really, really big high frequency of nesting activity. So with that comes a lot of hatchlings every summer, and there's always hatchlings that need to be rescued, that are found dead, stranded. If it's not just because of hurricane activity and natural factors, it's because of beach lights and, you know, human impact. We'll sum it all up into one thing, and threats because of that. So I felt like, as a Pittsburgher, and of course my family vacationed at Emerald Isle growing up, we have a very vital role in taking this, what we can teach people here about these cute little hatchlings, and everybody's, you know, sex sells and babies sell. So, you know, you show them a cute little hatchling and let them hold one, and it's unfortunate to say that just telling somebody isn't good enough. You give them this practical knowledge, these easy things that they can do on their next visit, and you let them hold a hatchling or see one up close that they might never see, and all of a sudden, I bet you go down to that beach the next year, and you're going to think about what you saw. And you might now know that when you see these nests being marked off, what you can do or cannot do, or you see people digging up nests like they do for every single nest that's down there. You can jump in and be involved in that. You can do beach sweeps. You can do beach cleanups. So you don't just have to lay on the beach for a week, you know, which I would not argue with at this point. But a lot of people just don't know the things that they can be involved in. And I generally think that people want to do good. They just, for some reason, it's just not good enough to say, don't litter, it's wrong, you know. But if you show them what happens to a sea turtle that eats a cigarette butt or a trash bag or whatever, and you tell them that only 1 in 1,000 live to reproduce, and reproductive age is 20 years old, and these little hatchlings have all these things that they have to cross to survive just to get to that point, and so few do, you point all these things out for them and show it to them, just the small little differences that they can make. I believe it's going to make a much bigger impact, and I believe that Pittsburgh is a really good place to start that message and send it out there. I also started this project here because I think that we are a landlocked institution, so we're not the obvious choice for the coastal institutions where these sea turtles are, because of how the continental shelf is. So it really keeps boats farther out to sea, but that shouldn't be an excuse. That shouldn't be an excuse to do nothing, or you know, we can't certainly, you know, highlight every conservation project under the sun here, but I really believe that we can define barriers, and that we can really raise the bar for what other non-coastal institutions can and should be doing, the small changes that they can make, and the small role that they can play in the bigger picture too. So I want to be an example for, you know, our Midwest institutions and other institutions like that aren't situated on the coast, and how we can help too. The hatchling, that's how their hatchling rescue project started. So we bring 2 hatchlings up every year to our facility that were rescued, tell the story of why that happened, use that as a teaching tool for our visitors. We'll grow them out here for, the hopes are between 1 and 3 years, although we usually just keep the majority of them for a year, take them back down the next fall for release, and bring 2 more hatchlings back. So it's a continuous cycle, which tells that story that even in the best of times, if there's no hurricane impacts, no oil spills, no whatever, there will always be sea turtles that need help. That's just a fact for these guys because of all the natural predators. So we'll always have a job. We'll keep one behind and raise it up to be about a 2-year-old, because if we can keep it at around a 2-year-old size, we can try to fit it with a satellite transmitter. And that allows us to be able to deploy one and then track it and see where it goes. So again, another great teaching tool. That's a very expensive piece of equipment. Usually it's about $3,000 for a tag of that size. You know, it can help us just with their management strategy, just from aquarium standpoint. And certainly if you spend a year or 2 in the trials and tribulations of taking care of these guys and you drop them in the ocean, it's kind of like, well, good luck, bye. You know, it is nice to be able to just sort of see where they go and kind of watch your kid get out there and into the world. And so we've enjoyed that, and it was very, very well received when we released our first one last year. We deployed it with a satellite tag, and unfortunately we only got readings for about 9 days off of LC, but the hype because of it was just incredible. We've got a tag lined up for Ghostbuster for this coming year. So as long as everybody's doing well, we'll take Ghostbuster, who will be our 2-year-old, and we'll take either Carson or Clemente, who will then be a 1-year-old, down for release. And then we'll bring 2 more little hatchlings back, so we'll have hatchlings and a 1-year-old, and hopefully just keep that process going as long as North Carolina wants to partner with us. So that's that first step. And fortunately, we'll also keep 1 behind. This is all if they're healthy enough to be released, of course, but it highlights the importance of their conservation and helps us to manage them better, to see if we're following them and they're getting into trouble or getting into trouble spots because of certain times of the year that we want to release them to take on more stuff. So we're interested in taking in non-releasable sea turtles here too. We had one Peter Pan that unfortunately did pass away from the injuries that she sustained from an old either boat strike or shark bite injury. It left her with gastrointestinal issues that she couldn't really pass feces very well or efficiently at all. And so upon necropsy, we found that she actually had a bunch of scar tissue around her colon that wasn't allowing that to flex, so she was very, very easily impacted. And that's essentially, I mean, she had a systemic infection that was probably the root of that, which was from an injury, and you wouldn't be able to see that necessarily or get to it. Unfortunately, with turtles being that they're shells on the top and the bottom, you can't necessarily just go in and try to repair some tissue. So I don't know how much good we could have really helped her with, but we learned a lot from her. She was a beautiful green sea turtle. So we are, as I was just kind of saying with hatchlings, there are just as many sea turtles that have injuries that are so significant that they can never be, they're deemed non-releasable, because we know that that would likely be a death sentence for that turtle. You know, it could be that it's not necessarily blind, because a lot of turtles can really survive well being blind in one eye or even both eyes, but flipper injuries or paralysis or partial paralysis, if they can't dive down and they can't get away and they can't get and search for food, where they're going to be on a big, you know, open ocean, then that's setting them up for failure. So we have the responsibility to preserve these beautiful animals, put them onto an exhibit where we can let them live out their lifespan the best way that we can absolutely accommodate them. So in a multi-species exhibit that's very enriching for them, work with training and their rehabilitation, whatever they need, just so that these long-lived species, I mean, they're 80 years plus, that they can have a healthy lifestyle for as long as that's going to be.